It looks like EVs have just hit a roadblock. For a while there, it seemed like the entire automotive industry was hurtling headfirst toward an all-electric future, with traditional automakers scrambling to catch up to Elon Musk's suspiciously quiet humming. But the road to that future, as it turns out, is paved with unsold electric vehicles, and dealerships are struggling to move them off the lot. It seems the electric revolution may have to be put on hold because nobody told the dealerships how to actually, sell these things. Remember when everyone thought EVs were going to change the world? Well, dealerships certainly bought into the hype, often quite literally. They shelled out big bucks to revamp their businesses, installing charging stations that cost more than a decent used sedan, and sending their sales staff to seminars that probably involved a lot of trust falls and forced chanting about sustainable transportation solutions. And who could blame them? Everyone, from politicians to that guy on Twitter who hasn't showered in days but swears he knows everything, was saying EVs were the future. But here's the thing about the future. Sometimes it arrives late, and it doesn't always RSVP. Dealerships across the country are now stuck with shiny new EV infrastructure and a sales team that can explain regenerative braking in their sleep, but not enough customers willing to take the plunge. Turns out transitioning to an electric future is a bit like convincing your friend group to split the Uber XL when it's surge pricing. Everyone agrees it's the right thing to do, but nobody wants to be the one to actually shell out the extra cash. And speaking of cash, let's talk about return on investment, or ROI as the business bros call it. Remember those expensive charging stations and the sales team retreats with the mandatory drum circles? Yeah, those aren't paying for themselves. Dealerships are finding out the hard way that investing in the EV future was a bit like buying a Tesla Cybertruck based solely on Elon Musk's PowerPoint presentation. It sounded amazing in theory, but the reality is a bit more complicated. So, dealerships are stuck between a rock and, well, an electric motor. They've got all this pressure to embrace the EV revolution, but the customers aren't exactly forming an orderly queue to buy these vehicles. It's like throwing a party, and only your weird aunt who collects porcelain dolls shows up. You've got all this food, all this music, and all these party favors, but nobody to enjoy them. And trust me, nobody wants to be stuck explaining regenerative braking to Aunt Mildred. Now, let's talk about a dirty little secret of the car dealership world: maintenance. See, dealerships make a surprising amount of their money not from selling you that new car smell, but from fixing your car when it inevitably breaks down. It's the circle of life, but with more oil changes. But EVs, those smug little electric darlings, they don't break down as often. They don't need oil changes. Their brakes last longer because of that regenerative braking thing we talked about. And their engines are basically computers that silently sip electrons instead of guzzling gasoline. It's enough to make a mechanic weep into their wrench set. For dealerships, this lack of required maintenance is a real kick in the, well, it's like finding out your favorite all-you-can-eat buffet has switched to a prix-fixe menu with tiny portions. Sure, the food might be better for you, but where's the fun in that? The problem is dealerships rely on that steady stream of maintenance income. It's what allows them to keep the lights on, the coffee brewing, and the inflatable tube men dancing in the wind. Without it, they're like a stand-up comedian without a stool. They might still be able to tell jokes, but something feels off. Let's be honest, selling a car isn't always a walk in the park. It can be a long, arduous process that involves more awkward test drives than a high school prom night. But selling an EV? Well, that's a whole different beast. It's like trying to convince your grandparents to switch from their flip phone to a smartphone. It's possible, but be prepared for a lot of frustrated sighs and questions that make you question your own sanity. First, you've got the education factor. Selling an EV isn't just about kicking the tires and going for a spin. Salespeople have to become walking, talking EV encyclopedias, ready to answer a barrage of questions about range anxiety, charging times, and whether the car can run on potatoes. Spoiler alert, it can't. They essentially have to become tech support for a very expensive gadget on wheels. Then there's the whole commission conundrum. See, dealerships make money hand over fist by tacking on extras like undercoating, VIN etching, and that magical paint sealant that somehow costs more than a small island nation. But EVs, with their minimalist approach to maintenance, don't offer as many opportunities for upselling. It's like trying to sell a life insurance policy to a vampire. Sure, it's technically possible, but good luck convincing them they need it. So salespeople are putting in more effort, spending hours explaining the intricacies of EV ownership, only to be rewarded with a commission check that's thinner than a politician's promise. It's enough to make them want to trade in their sales pitch for a good, old-fashioned wrench. After all, at least when you're fixing a car, you know you're going to get paid for your time. Let's talk profit margins, shall we? Specifically, the razor-thin, wafer-thin, almost invisible profit margins that dealerships are currently making on EVs. Remember those big investments we talked about earlier? The charging stations, the training, the whole shebang? Well, those costs have to be recouped somehow, and right now, dealerships are struggling to make ends meet. See, the EV market is a bit like a game of musical chairs right now, with more players than seats. You've got established automakers finally getting their electric acts together, startups trying to disrupt the industry with questionable claims about battery range, and everyone fighting for a piece of the pie. This fierce competition has led to price wars, incentives, and discounts that would make even the savviest bargain hunter blush. For dealerships, this means they're often selling EVs at a loss, or at best, breaking even. It's like running a marathon only to be handed a participation trophy and a coupon for 10% off your next race entry fee. Sure, you technically accomplished something, but you're also sweaty, exhausted, and wondering if it was all worth it. And let's not forget about those pesky supply chain issues that have been plaguing the automotive industry. Getting your hands on a new EV can be as difficult as finding a sober person at a college party. The wait times are long, the inventory is scarce, and dealerships are left scrambling to explain to eager customers why their dream EV won't arrive until next year. Maybe. Remember when you couldn't find an EV to save your life? When the wait lists were longer than a CVS receipt, and people were resorting to Craigslist ads that smelled faintly of desperation? Well, those days seem to be over. The EV market, once a seller's paradise, is starting to resemble a clearance sale at a Blockbuster video. The problem is simple: supply and demand. Automakers, eager to cash in on the EV craze, ramped up production, churning out electric vehicles faster than you can say Tesla autopilot crash investigation. But somewhere along the way, demand started to wane. It turns out that not everyone is ready to embrace the electric revolution just yet. Some people are hesitant about range anxiety. Others are put off by the higher price tag, and some just really like the smell of gasoline in the morning. This mismatch between supply and demand has left dealerships with a glut of unsold EVs taking up valuable space on their lots. It's like trying to throw a dinner party and realizing you've accidentally bought enough food to feed a small army. Sure, you could offer everyone seconds, thirds, and fourths, but at some point, you're just going to be left with a fridge full of leftovers and a sense of existential dread. For dealerships, this oversupply of EVs is a real problem. They're stuck with inventory they can't move, and every day that an EV sits unsold on the lot is another day that it depreciates in value. It's like watching your retirement fund slowly dwindle away. Except instead of stocks and bonds, it's a shiny new electric car that nobody wants to buy. So there you have it. The electric revolution might have to be put on hold while the industry figures out how to turn a profit. Dealers are caught between a rock and a hard place, forced to invest heavily in EVs, but faced with slim margins, high sales effort, and customers who aren't quite ready to make the switch. It's like trying to sell vegan bacon at a meat lovers convention. Good in theory, but a tough sell in practice. What do you think about this EV dilemma? Are dealerships right to pump the brakes on electric vehicles, or should they be doing more to embrace the future? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more insightful deep dives into the ever-changing world of cars. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.